Everybody saying TDKV. Yeah. Holla if you hear me, my freaks and geeks. TDKV here coming at you with another awesome video. And today we are doing my top 10 favorite musicians of all time. But before we get into it, go ahead, subscribe, and hit that thumbs up for more awesome content just like this. So, my top 10 favorite musicians. This is not genre based. This is like just purely like who I think my top 10 favorite musicians of all time are. These are musicians, bands, whether they're bands, just artists, or whatever. These are my favorite. These are bee's knees to me. And we got a few honorable mentions. Honorable mention number one is going to be Jimi Hendrix. Then we have Rage Against the Machine, Tupac, Motley Crue, Real Big Fish, Ramones, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pantera, and Beastie Boys. And yes, those are a lot of honorable mentions, but kind of too hard to break it down to this 10. It was kind of like heartbreaking because I love a lot of different music, and I love a lot of different just like musicians in general. So figure I'd give a shout out to a lot of the ones that didn't make the list. But starting out at number 10 is Less Than Jake. They are a punk ska band, started in the 90s, and I'm pretty sure they still tour and make music today. They just a very fun time, and if you've never heard of them, I'd recommend going and listen to them. They their first like 4 albums are close to perfection, as close to perfection as you could get. And you're probably wondering what ska music is. Ska music is kind of, so it's like punk based. There's trombones, trumpet. There's like a lot of brass instruments in it, and it kind of like gives you like a vibe of like the 50s like doo-wop, but like they're more like have like a punk based sound. But like ska music's like, it's very fun, and it's very like you could like just makes you want to get up and dance. And Less Than Jake, I've seen them. I think that they are the band I've seen the second most amount of times. Maybe even I've been to so many concerts that I can't even keep count at this point. But Less Than Jake would be my number 10. My number 9 favorite band of all time is Led Zeppelin. They, to me, top and down, every member of their band is top 5 in whatever instrument they play. Jimmy Page, second greatest guitarist of all time. John Paul Jones, one of the greatest drummers of all time. Robert Plant might be the best singer of all time. And John Bonham, he's top 2 drummers of all time. I said Robert Plant's a drummer. I meant to say singer. But yes, Led Zeppelin, their first 4 albums to me are just a masterpiece, and doesn't really get much better than them. And they would be more down the list, but they I've never had a point in my life where I was like, I don't want to say obsessed, but I've always respected them. And as I've gotten older, like I said, if this was a top 10 greatest musicians or like most talented musicians list, they're probably number 1. So, but they're at number 9. My number 8 favorite band of all time is Black Flag. My inspiration in life, and just like somebody who I've admired, is Henry Rollins. And he is, to me, the embodiment of just doing it, like DIY, do it yourself. He got up, he didn't take no shit from nobody, and he went from being a fan of Black Flag to becoming their lead singer. And it just takes a lot. And even like before Henry Rollins, early Black Flag I love and appreciate. Like most of Black Flag's music and their discography is really good. If you want to listen to some angry angst bunch of kids just belling out how angry they are about their jobs, about like their mental health. That's the album "Damaged" by Black Flag. That's Henry Rollins' first album that he recorded with them. Oh, that is my, like, I don't want to say my soundtrack to my life, but that's just an album that I felt so connected with. Like, I remember being 20, 21, just always being pissed off, and that would be an album I'd be able to throw on, and I just felt like Henry was like sitting there singing with me, singing about how I was feeling. So Black Flag, number 8 favorite band of all time. But Henry Rollins, like I said, if you ever get the chance, he has a biography called Get in the Van with Black Flag, and book just like kind of like changed my life in a way, because it just inspired me to just not accept stuff that I'm not happy with. Number 7 favorite musician of all time, Metallica. They would be way higher up on this list, but after And Justice for All, like the Black Album, I still like the Black Album, but their first 5 albums to me are metal perfection. It's just, and I'm sure there's probably going to be some Megadeth fans in here that feel different, but to me, Metallica's first, especially their first 4 albums, you had Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. Perfection. I could listen to all 4 of those, top to bottom, back to back, not skipping one sentence song. It's a shame that Cliff Burton, R.I.P., rest in peace his soul, he passed away way too young. Died in that bus crash that happened to them whenever they're on tour. That kind of changed their projection for what they were aiming for, because like he was like a little bit more for the music, I felt like, and they just kind of started making stuff just to make money, which I do get that bands, eventually musicians want to make money, and that is something that I do get, but it is what it is. Now, my number 6 favorite musician of all time is actually a tie, because I could not, like, just like the way the list had to be broken down, I didn't know where to put him at specifically. So my number 6 is a tie between Notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls and Wu-Tang Clan. 2 of my favorite rap hip-hop artists of all time. Wu-Tang Clan, it just, I love their sounds. I love, like, just, like, the group in general. My kitty's getting everywhere. But I just love the whole, like I said, just, like, the sound, their intensity, and the whole story about how they got radio played, because I guess they took over and kind of, like took over a radio station and kind of, like, made this radio DJ play them, and they ended up blowing up a little bit. So I always had respect for that. And then Biggie Smalls, he was just the first rapper that I ever really got into heavy, and he to me, he's in the top 3 greatest rappers of all time, and so yeah, that's my number 6 favorite musician of all time. Number 5, Prince. Love Prince. He, to me, is the true king of pop. He could play every instrument, and for his first, like, I think, album or 2, he actually played every instrument for, like, the recordings. The man could sing, dance, play guitar, bass, drum, keyboard, like, you name it, he could play it. And just master of his craft. Again, like, one thing that you'll come to find out is, like, one of my favorite things I love about certain musicians is their way they came up. And he didn't have, he made his own name. And I just respect for Prince, and one of my favorite albums of all time, arguably my favorite album of all time, is Purple Rain. So yes, my number 5 favorite musician of all time is Prince. Number 4 favorite musician of all time is The Doors. Jim Morrison. Hold on, kitty, get out of here. And no, I'm not editing this. A cat being a ruckus. But the Doors are hands down my number 4 favorite artist of all time. The first, not the first band I ever got into, but the first band that I just like studied, learned their history, knew every member of the band, knew almost everything about them. Always loved their sound. Jim Morrison, probably my favorite singer, if not my second favorite singer of all time. Just love his voice. He was a poet, and he just knew how to make some weird shit sound really good. Basically, like, best way I could put it. Number 3 favorite artist of all time is Bullet for My Valentine. They are a metal / like metalcore hard rock band from the early 2000s, and they still play to this day. One of my first metal bands that I ever got into. I've seen them, I think, the most times out of any musician I've ever seen. I've always loved their sounds. Matt Tuck, their lead singer and guitarist, is just knows how to shred, and he has an amazing voice. And even whenever he like gets into like the screaming, it doesn't sound terrible. Like, he just all around. That's one of my favorite. Like, if I had to like break down like musicians from like outside the band, he's always been up there for me. And yeah, I love Bullet for Valentine. Ever since The Poison, that's one of my favorite albums of all time. Screaming, Fire, Fever. They have some bangers, that's for sure. My number 2 favorite musician of all time, Green Day. The very first band that I ever really got into. Starting back from Dookie came out the same year that I was born. You know, I remember, like, whenever being a kid, I just remember listening to Brain Stew. My eyes feel like they're gonna bleed. Loved, always loved Green Day. Their most recent stuff, it's not my bag of tea, but everything up to 21st Century Breakdown is great. And they've had some good songs after that, and I'm not saying that I don't like their new stuff, but it's just not exactly for me. But I love the band, Billy Joe Armstrong, Trey Cool, Mike Dirnt. Great band. And then my number 1 favorite musician of all time, and this is a tie, cannot pick between these two, and that is Misfits and Danzig. More specifically to Glenn Danzig. The Misfits, they're the originators of horror punk. They basically created their own subgenre. Why I love them so much is, again, they were part of that DIY movement of the punk bands in the late 70s, early 80s. They started off not having anything. They made a single that I think they made like 2,000 copies of, which is one of the most rarest like vinyls of all time now. And they tried getting an actual album, because they started out in 1977. They tried getting an album, and it's like the numbers are always vary, but they apparently like up to like 20 record companies told them that nobody would ever listen to them and their sound sucks. And instead of giving up on their dream, they said, no, screw that. They ended up creating their own label that was named Plan 9, and they released singles, 45s, EPs out the wazoo, got their music out there. They were going on tour, playing for basically nothing, and ended up creating a cult following, basically. They have what their fan club is called the Fiend Club, and they had people, sending letters to them, mailing, and like the rest is like history from there. Like, they started in 1977, and they technically didn't get their first album until 1981, which is Walk Among Us, classic, and just to me, the epitome of don't give up, bust your ass, and you could do it. And then Danzig is Glenn Danzig's third band, because he has a second band in between that's named Samhain. Although I do love them, they don't fall under one of my favorite categories, and I just said, to me, Samhain's nowhere near as good as the Misfits or Danzig, but Danzig is his third favorite band, and you probably have heard Danzig's song Mother. Mother! But they are one of the most underrated bands, I think, of all time. Their first album came out in 1988. Danzig 1. And boy, that is just a banger of an album. It starts off with Twist of Cain. I love Danzig's first 4 albums, kind of like Zeppelin. His first 4 albums are just perfection, top to bottom. I will never skip one of those songs. Love every song almost as equally. That's like one of those things that like I would tear me apart to try naming my top 10 Danzig songs, because I love all of them. And yeah, he they're only, like I said, their only one hit was Mother, and that actually didn't become a hit till like 1992, whenever he did like a re-release of it. But top to bottom, the band Danzig, why I think they're underrated is just because Danzig, to me, him and Morrison are my top 2 favorite singers of all time, and I think they're both top 5 singers of all time easily. And then the guitarist, John Christ, very underrated guitarist. Then they had Eerie Von, a very great bass player. Then their drummer, Chuck Biscuits, probably my top 5 drummers of all time. He might be number 5 or 4, but he could bang on them drums. And just all around, I love Danzig and the Misfits. 2016, whenever they did their reunion, whenever like they got back together with Danzig and they did the reunion show at Ragfest, I literally spent every dime to my name. I ended up being in shambles afterwards, but it's one of those things that I would do over and over again. I had like tears of joy being able to actually say that I got to see the Misfits with Glenn Danzig. And I also seen, they call him Jerry's Fits, because their bass player Jerry Only kind of like made his own like version of the band after the fact. Like the Misfits have a very, very long and storied and drama-filled history. So, you know, if you ever want to hear about that, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll do a little video about that. But yeah, and I've seen Danzig do, I've seen him perform one time. It was at Riot Fest. He performed the entire Danzig 3 in its entirety. And again, like I said, Danzig's first 4 albums to me are pure magic. One of the best ever. So that's my top 10 favorite artists / musicians of all time. Do you agree with me? Do you not? And if so, who's your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, my freaks and geeks, see ya.